what's up, everyone, and welcome back to the End Zone Report. I am your host, Chris, as always, and I'm here for another awesome episode for you this week. We had a crazy week 4. We had a huge upset. The Giants managed to pull off potentially the upset of the year against the Los Angeles Chargers. We had 2 major season-ending injuries on top of all the other injuries that happened. We had some QB changes and some more roster movements that kind of threw us to a tizzy. So we are here to talk about all of it today, as well as looking ahead to a potentially even crazier week 5. We'll get into those matchups and those situations for all those teams as well. So as always, you can watch the show every week at youtube.com/the End Zone Report. You can also listen to the audio version at Spotify. You can follow the pages on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and X for all the updates on injuries and other roster situations. I post a lot of artwork for the episodes as well when they go live on your favorite platform. So with that, let's head over to what is happening with the NFL. So like I said, we had a lot of injuries, including 2 season-ending injuries for 2 superstars. Malik Neighbors, wide receiver of the New York Giants, has torn his ACL and is out for the year. And then on Monday night, we got Tyreek Hill, wide receiver of the Miami Dolphins, dislocated and torn some ligaments in his knee, and he will require surgery and be out for the remainder of the season as well. On top of that, we had a bunch of other injuries. Lamar Jackson tweaked his hamstring and left the game in the middle of the third quarter. Brock Purdy re-injured his toe, and we just got breaking news before recording that he is now ruled out for week 5. We also got the confirmation that Lamar Jackson will not be playing in week 5 as well. I believe Cooper Rush will back up Lamar, and we'll see who backs up Brock Purdy. I know Mac Jones has been pretty banged up as well throughout the week, so TBD on the quarterback situation for San Francisco. As well as San Francisco, we got Ricky Pearsall injuring his knee, and he has now been ruled out for week 5 as well, along with fellow wide receiver Juwan Jennings. So the Niners are really hurting for weapons and offensive pieces for sure all around. Christian McCaffrey still healthy. Fingers crossed that he remains healthy for this game. He will be the go-to guy on this offense. And then the defense also taking a hit with the Nick Bosa injury being gone for the rest of the year. So the Niners really, really hurting. If you thought they were injured last year, I think this has got to take the cake for the most injuries the Niners have dealt with within the span of the period. Remember that Brandon Ayuk has yet to return. He's probably not going to return at all this year. George Kittle is still on IR, so TBD on his return as well. We got Bucky Irving. This was kind of a sneaky one the last couple of days. I know a lot of people have been worried about Bucky Irving. It appears that he has suffered an ankle injury. He has been seen on crutches and a walking boot. So we will see what comes about with Bucky Irving and his week 5 status. As of right now, I think a lot of fantasy managers are looking at Bucky being out and making the right moves for Rashad White and Sean Tucker. So be aware of the Bucky news coming within hopefully the next day or so. Another IR victim is Cedric Tillman, wide receiver of the Browns. He has injured his hamstring, so he will be out at least 4 games. Darnell Mooney also tweaked his hamstring, wide receiver of the Falcons. And then some running back injuries. Miles Sanders injured his ankle. Tyler Goodson of the Colts injured his groin. And then Braylon Allen has been ruled out for week 5 with an MCL injury. So no competition for Breece Hall and the Jets. Looking at the running backs, we also got some unsettling news with Trey Benson, running back of the Arizona Cardinals, has been placed on IR. So we're looking at Michael Carter and DeMarcado being the running backs to start, and possibly even a third. I think Gannon has come out and said that they could potentially use a 3 running back system this week. That is the offense. We'll switch over to the defense injuries from the week. We've got Joe Alt injuring his ankle. It seems like he's going to be missing an extended period of time. Mandibuk looks like he injured his neck. Hassan Reddick injured his neck and suffered a concussion this last week. DJ Reed injured his hamstring. Marlon Humphrey injured his calf. Roquan Smith injured his hamstring. Nate Wiggins injured his chest. And then Eric Stokes injured his knee. So quite a bit of defensive superstars injured as well. Let me look at any of the other breaking news. We got Dylan Gabriel is starting at quarterback for the Browns, so Joe Flacco will be benched for Week 5. We will see what the quarterback room looks like in the coming weeks. Shedeur Sanders has been named QB3. Even though Flacco has been benched, he will be the emergency backup if Dylan Gabriel gets injured or does not perform very well. So those are the breaking news injuries coming out of Week 4. We will update you on the Bucky Irving one for sure, and then we'll find out what the quarterback room looks like for the Niners. So that's going to wrap up for the injury section of today's episode. Let's head over to the Week 4 storylines. So I've got 5 more storylines for you coming out of Week 4. Then we'll get into the Chase-O-meter to kind of wrap up the Week 4 recap. So my first bit of storyline is, what is the current state of the AFC North? It's pretty wild if you haven't looked at it yet. The standings look like this. We got the Cleveland Browns sitting last in the division at 1-3, as well as fellow rival Baltimore Ravens are sitting at number 3 at 1-3, surprisingly. Now with Lamar's hamstring injury, we will see how they perform with Cooper Rush this coming week. It's possible that they drop to 1-4, and if Cleveland sneaks out a win over Minnesota, we could see the Baltimore Ravens last in the division. So that is quite interesting. Then we have the Jake Browning-led Cincinnati Bengals sitting at 2-2 right now. I'm anticipating a pretty hefty loss to Detroit. So maybe they somehow drop to last in the division with wins from Baltimore and Cleveland. And then we have the Aaron Rodgers-led Pittsburgh Steelers sitting at 3-1 on top of the division. This is very surprising to me. I would not have predicted Pittsburgh to be up. I've always anticipated the division looking like this: Baltimore at top, Cincinnati at second, Steelers at third, and then the Browns at number 4. But the NFL said otherwise with injuries and other situations around this. This is one of the most high-powered divisions out there. You know, you have the NFC North with Minnesota, Detroit, Green Bay, Bears. That seems to be slowly heating up. I know the quarterback situation in Minnesota is a little disturbing, but Caleb has shown to be really good with the Bears. Detroit still hasn't missed a beat, even though they separated from Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn. And the Packers, who are on bye this week, are looking like a Super Bowl contending team with Jordan Love and then the acquisition of Micah Parsons from Dallas. So those have been 2 of the big divisions. I mean, an argument can be made for the AFC West. I know the Raiders are still kind of struggling with Geno, and Patrick Mahomes hasn't really looked like himself, but he did this past week. And then you have Bo Nix and the Broncos, and Herbert with the Chargers are just taking the league by storm right now. So those are the 3 divisions that I've really been keeping a close eye on. But I really wanted to bring up the AFC North because I would not have guessed it to shake out like this. Like, you have Dylan Gabriel now leading the Browns. You have Cooper Rush coming in for Baltimore. You have Jake Browning coming in for the Bengals. And the Steelers have Aaron Rodgers. Those are the 4 quarterbacks that I would never have guessed to be in this division at the same time. I would have guessed, Joe Burrow would be starting with the Bengals. Lamar would be healthy and taking the league by storm with Baltimore. And I would guess Shedeur Sanders would have been, the Browns quarterback by now. And Aaron Rodgers getting benched and somebody else coming in to take over because he has just hit that age curve. But Aaron Rodgers hasn't missed a beat. He's looked actually really good with Pittsburgh. He had a little bit of a hiccup in week 2, but he bounced back against Minnesota in week 4. And that team looks solid. I know they have the Jalen Warren injury, but Gainwell really took to the starting role very well last week against Minnesota. And DK Metcalf is finally getting involved like he should. This is going to be a crazy division for the AFC North. So keeping an eye on them. The next storyline I want to touch on kind of is a good segue into here. Looking at the QB situations, and I have 5 that I wanted to look at. So we got Cleveland, like I said. They got Dylan Gabriel starting now. Joe Flacco has been one of the worst quarterbacks in the league so far through week 4. And you have Shadur Sanders, who is still sitting at QB3. I'm wondering when Shadur Sanders is going to get a shot at starting. I guess we'll see how Dylan Gabriel does this week with Minnesota. If he doesn't succeed, I could honestly see Shadur Sanders coming in next week or in a couple weeks. Dylan Gabriel, he's got a cannon. Still, a rookie, still learning. And I know the offense isn't the most ideal situation for a rookie, but maybe Dylan Gabriel and Shadur Sanders will end up having a duke out for the starting job in Cleveland. I'm still anticipating Cleveland, having a high pick in this coming draft, probably for the next few years until they acquire the right assets to make this a playoff-worthy team in the future. Another team that I'm really keeping my eye on, and that is the Tennessee Titans with rookie quarterback Cam Ward. Cam Ward has shown a little bit of life in him gradually throughout the weeks, but sitting at 0-4, it makes you think, is Cam Ward the guy for Tennessee? Are there going to be a regime change coming in week 5, week 6, week 7? Are they ever going to bench Cam Ward for somebody else? Tennessee is a really sore spot right now with it being 0-4. You can make the argument for the Jets. I didn't put the Jets on my list because they seem pretty committed to Justin Fields. It's just really uncertain, not uncertain, but just kind of really just unfortunate that they are 0-4, even though Justin Fields has looked pretty good. That defense just hasn't looked like the Jets defense that we know of. And he's only got Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall to help him out. He needs weapons to be successful. They need to protect him on that offensive line because he did suffer a concussion the past week. So I thought about adding the Jets to here, but I think Aaron Glenn seems pretty committed to Justin Fields, at least for this year. I mean, it's very possible that Justin Fields isn't with this team next year because of the contract situation, and just maybe they might want to move into a different direction than Justin Fields. But I did not include him on here. But Cincinnati is on this list with Jake Browning. I mean, Jake Browning looks really bad. I know it's more of an offensive line issue, but still, you got Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Chase Brown all suffering in the stat category because that offensive line is not giving Jake Browning the time to make some plays and win games. So do they stick with Jake Browning? Do they make a trade move in the mid-season deadline window? Do they start looking at the offensive line as the issue instead of the quarterback and try to acquire some offensive linemen to protect Browning? I just don't know. There's a couple different ways that Zach Taylor can go with this. We all probably saw the video of Jamar Chase getting in a heated argument with Zach Taylor in the middle of the game last week. It's kind of question marks with Cincinnati Bengals right now, and it's really unfortunate because you got one of the best wide receiver duos in the league suffering because of the Joe Burrow injury, who is probably not going to come back this year. I know they keep saying middle of December at the earliest, but if this team is, got a losing record, no shot of the playoffs, there is no reason to throw Joe Burrow out there for 2-3 weeks. You might as well just bench him for the rest of the year and try again next year in 2026. So Cincinnati, all over, just question marks all over. San Francisco, kind of touched on them with the injury recap. They are hurting at QB. Brock Purdy still dealing with that turf toe. Mac Jones has been beaten to hell during his starts. And Christian McCaffrey is somehow staying alive. All the weapons in San Francisco are injured or likely to be pushing through injuries. Juwan Jennings has been battling his injury all year, and now they finally just ruled him out. Ricky Pearsall has been banged up a couple times, but this must have been the last straw because they're going to sit him out. George Kittle is still on the IR. They have Demarcus Robinson and I think Kendrick Bourne there. Not, the most flashiest names, but maybe they can get something done this week. You have Tongas filling in for George Kittle at tight end. But it's really just Christian McCaffrey. So we'll see how this team does this week against, I believe, the Rams. We'll go over that in the matchups coming up later on in the episode. But QB situation looking pretty rough in San Francisco. And then I threw in Minnesota because it's just a big question mark right now. Carson Wentz did really well against the Bengals, but that was the Bengals. He seemed to struggle a little bit more against Pittsburgh this last week. And now they have the Cleveland Browns, who have been a top 5 defense all year. Uh, and then they have Philly coming up. It's tough couple of games for Carson if he's the starter. JJ McCarthy, of course, still dealing with an ankle injury. He has been ruled out, I believe, for week 5. So Carson will get the start against Myles Garrett and that Cleveland defense. But who's to say if Carson struggles, JJ McCarthy ends up being healthy next week, he takes the start against Philly? Or does Carson kind of hold out the job and faces his own team in Philadelphia? So question marks around Minnesota, some worries. You have Justin Jefferson, you got Jordan Addison back finally. Adam Thielen has returned home. Jordan Mason looks really awesome in Aaron Jones's absence. It looks like Aaron Jones is looking to come back in week 8, but who's to say Jordan Mason just keeps the job and Aaron Jones just gets eased back into it as a backup role. The defense has been taking a hit with the Van Ginkel injury and some other ones. The offensive line has been banged up all year. So maybe that is a contributing factor to the decision on do we start Carson or do we start JJ McCarthy. I think they're better off starting Carson. He's more elite. He's got more experience. And JJ McCarthy seems to still need a lot of teaching and dealing with some injuries. So with that offensive line, I think you really need to look at, is it better for McCarthy's future to just sit out this week until the offensive line gets healthy, until the defense gets healthy, and just throw out Carson and see what you can do? Maybe you can replicate something like you did Sam Darnold. So question marks around Minnesota on what the future brings at the quarterback situation. There's some other ones like how serious is Lamar's injury? How many games will Cooper Rush play? You've got LA, God forbid Stafford gets hurt, even though he has looked very good. We could be seeing an opportunity for Garoppolo if Stafford, does get injured. There's a lot of question marks around it. Does Kyler Murray finally get a groove, or is Arizona going to move on for him? There's a lot of situations. Tua. How is Tua going to handle the Tyreek situation? Last week, it seems like Waddle and Darren Waller were there to help him. But Tua, I've always said this, Tua is one concussion away from retiring from the NFL. So if he gets another concussion during this year, he will be done forever. And Miami will have to go back to the drawing board with a quarterback. So a lot of questions for the quarterbacks after week 4. Another storyline that I have, and this is the one I've been probably talking about the most, we need to get rid of the ties. So last week, week 4, we got our first tie of the year. Green Bay, Dallas, Sunday night, 40-40. They need to either do the basketball rules where you just go into overtime until there's a winner, or we do the hockey route, which I think has been pretty popular on social media now with the kicking shootout. You start the kicker at, the 25-yard line. Then you go up to 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, and so on until one of them misses. And then that is the winning. You just add 3 points to the scoreboard, and then that is the winning score for the game. I'm sick of ties. It kind of ruins the division breakdown of the records, and it needs to stop. They need to come out of these games with a winner. And I'm sure Vegas, they're still collecting the money because of the over-unders and all that. But, the work and family pick'ems where, Uncle Eddie picked Dallas, but ended up in a tie. So then he can't win the family pick'ems with the Dallas win. So, and it's just no fun. Ties are no fun. We need a winner. We watch the game to see who wins. Ties in the NFL is like both teams come, they show up, they work their hearts out, and then they just shake hands at the end and say, oh, that game didn't mean nothing. Because honestly, it doesn't. I know when it comes to end of season rankings and where the standings are, I know each team gets like half a win or whatever the heck they do in the league. But it's just, we need a winner. We need winners in every single game for this to be competitive and to be enjoyable for the fans and the players as well. I'm sure the players don't like ties either, because they're like, I'd rather lose than tie. We need to know who is the best of the best out of all this. So that is kind of my little rant after week 4 is we need to get rid of the ties, whether it's double overtime, triple overtime, whatever. Copy what the NBA does, where you have a winner no matter what. Or we go the hockey route, which I think is pretty exciting. You do the kick shootout, bumping up 5 yards until one of the kickers misses. So that is my opinion on how these ties should be handled in the NFL. Then I kind of wanted to dive into, for my second storyline, the season enders. Malik Neighbors, superstar, young wide receiver for the New York Giants, unfortunately tore his ACL this past week and is out for the year. This is a heartbreaker for the Giants, even though they ended up upsetting the Chargers in that same game with Jackson Dart. It's still a knife into the heart for the Giants fans, and we pour one out for you guys because Malik Neighbors is awesome. It's been a bumpy road with the quarterback situations, the records. I have my own thoughts on Brian Daboll as a coach, but I still hate to see these superstar wide receivers go down with season-ending injuries, because he was having such a really good year. He was starting to get featured more and more and more with every game. It would have been fun to see him ignite the world on fire with Jackson Dart, who seems to be the best option at quarterback right now for the Giants. We'll see how he does going into this week against the New Orleans Saints. But I'm excited for the Jackson Dart, regardless of the Malik Neighbors injury, but it still sucks that we will not have Malik Neighbors for the rest of the 2025 season. On the other end of the spectrum, now, personal opinions aside, it still sucks that Tyreek Hill is out for the 2025 season with that horrendous knee injury. Those sickos out there, I want to talk to you for a minute. Quit play-by-playing, slow-mowing, whatever the heck you're doing on this injury. It's disgusting and nobody wants to see it. If you don't know what I'm talking about, here's the scoop. All over social media, all I see is freeze images or slow-mo shots of the exact moment that Tyreek's knee dislocated from his body. It is disgusting, and there's no reason why we need to watch this on social media. Same thing with the telecast. I think even the telecasters are like, we need to stop showing this because this is really, really gross. So just stop it. Be respectful. I know everybody has their opinion. I have my own opinions on Tyreek Hill, the person. Let's just pay some respect to the player and quit spreading this disgusting injury all over social media for people to watch. Like, we saw it live. If you didn't see it live, that sucks, but you're kind of spared from the graphic, because it's probably one of the most graphic injuries I've seen on TV in a while. The last one that I can think of is, if you remember, that Dak injury where the camera was on Dak for a few seconds and we were watching him put his leg back into place. Like, it was one of the more horrific things I've seen. But this Tyreek Hill with, his leg literally 90 degrees the other way, it was really, really bad, and we need to stop doing crazy stuff like slow-mowing and free shotting and watching this thing happen over and over again. You're just a bunch of sickos. So stop it. Anyways, I don't feel as bad as a Tyreek Hill injury than I do Malik Neighbors. Tyreek has been under investigation for, domestic violence charges and all that, but he's still a really good superstar player. It sucks to see him go, but you could easily tell that he was miserable in Miami. He wanted out, just like he wanted out of Kansas City. So this is and what I don't understand is the laughing and the clapping that he was doing when he was being carted off the field. Now, you can make your own speculations. My opinion is that he was glad that he got injured because he doesn't have to deal with Miami anymore. And I'm expecting this to be a career ender. I don't think anybody's going to want to sign him. I don't think he's going to physically be able to play football ever again. I mean, the dude is past on the wrong side of 30. This is a horrific injury. He's been injured in the past. He's been a poster child for NFL and domestic violence. So I think this is the end of Tyreek Hill. I will expect him to make a retirement announcement. Probably not during the season, but I can guarantee sometime in the offseason he will be seriously considering, if not choosing, retirement from the NFL. So, but those are two pretty big ones. Waddle and Darren Waller seem like pretty legit weapons for Tua. So I don't think this really changes too much of the Miami dynamic, because Tyreek Hill honestly hasn't really done a whole lot up through the first weeks of the NFL. Waddle seems like the clear number one. Darren Waller seems healthy and physically able to be that number two for Tua. Devon Achane, I know he's been ridiculed for being small, slow, not efficient, but he's still an elite style running back that can be helpful for Tua. The defense needs to get their groove going. They looked a lot better this week, but there's still some weaknesses on that defense. But as far as the Giants, the Giants losing Malik Neighbors hurts them a lot. Looking at the roster, Wan'Dale Robinson is probably going to be the wide receiver one. You got Theo Johnson as tight end, who's probably going to be a big target for Dart on those short passes. You've got Scattaboo, who's lighting the running back room on fire. So I'm excited to see what Scattaboo and Jackson Dart can do with this version of the Giants now. And Wan'Dale Robinson is a decent back. You know, he's always just been that number two. But I think he's a capable number one. You got Darius Slayton still there, who's shown some spurt over the years. So I'm curious to see what Jackson Dart does this year and how he handles that absence from Malik Neighbors. And it's kind of exciting for next year when Malik Neighbors does return, and he'll be able to create more of a rapport with Jackson Dart next year. So looking more so into the future for the Giants, but this current state of the Giants is still kind of exciting with the young guys they have on the offense. And then the first one of the storylines ties into the Giants as well, and that is the potential upset of the year where the Giants defeated the Chargers 21-18. It was a crazy game. Jackson Dart came slinging, even though Justin Herbert was laying the ground pretty early on. Justin Herbert's having an MVP-style year, and they were taken down by the Giants. They had an opportunity to win this game, but they came up short, and Jackson Dart gets his win for the first start in the NFL against a high-powered team from Justin Herbert. So it was a pretty awesome game. I'm looking forward to more upsets in the future. If anybody was going to get an upset this year, I'm kind of glad it was the Giants with the Jackson Dart debut, with the Malik Neighbors injuries. It's pretty exciting. I don't like the fact that this probably saved Brian Daboll his job for a few weeks. I have never been a fan of Brian Daboll, the head coach. I think he was a good coordinator back in the day. He did some really good stuff with Josh Allen, with turning him around into the elite superstar that he is. But I don't think he's the right fit for a head coach in New York. I think they need a regime change. So I was kind of hoping the Giants would take a back seat this year in 2025 so that they can just part ways with Daboll finally and just move on with another regime change. But I think this saved Brian Daboll at least probably till week 8, maybe. And then we'll see how Jackson Dart does and what the record is looking at in New York. So awesome upset, potential upset of the year. The Giants taking down the Chargers 21-18. So those are the storylines that I picked this week coming out of week 4. One last bit of things that we need to do until we take a break and then head into the fantasy corner for the week. If you're a movie nerd like me, then check out my movie podcast, Cinematic Reviews. Every week I review the hottest new releases, beloved franchises like Star Wars and Harry Potter, and even upcoming projects like Spider-Man Brand New Day. You can watch the show every week at youtube.com/The Cinematic Reviews or listen to the audio version on your favorite podcast network. We have the awesome and always fun Chase-O-Meter. So pulling up Chase Brown's stats, he looked a lot better this week, but unfortunately he is still down at rank 31 running back on the year. But his stats are promising. So depending on how the future holds for Chase Brown and the Bengals, this is showing a little bit of life in Brown, but still not the greatest output there. So he got 3 receptions for 31 yards, and then he had 10 carries for 40 yards. So you're looking at a 70-yard day. No touchdowns yet. He's still involved on the offense. 10 carries, not what he's been used to. He's more used to the 20 carry range. And then the receptions, only 3 receptions. That is pretty unfortunate. And he was only targeted 3 times. So at least he caught all 3, which is pretty good. But he's looking at 4 yards a carry, which is a lot better than what he did. Week 3, the horrendous week 3 against Minnesota, he was at 0.3 yards a carry. Before that, against Jacksonville, he was 2.94 yards a carry. And then week 1 of the season, he was at 2.05 against Cleveland. So he's got Detroit, Green Bay, which are really, really tough matchups for him. Then you're looking at Steelers, which not the worst matchup. They kind of shut down Jordan Mason last week. We'll see if he can kind of bounce back against Pittsburgh. Then he's got the Jets. Then he's got Chicago. Then they have their week 10 bye. So it's not looking great for Chase Brown. With the bet, kind of a reminder of the bet between James and Megan, the Gridiron Goddess, is Chase Brown has to hit top 10 for Megan to hit her $20 bill from James. But James is looking pretty good right now. Current rank, like I said, is 31 running back on the season. So we will look ahead to week 5 for Chase Brown to maybe bounce back and maybe get into that top 20 range, hopefully. So that wraps up the recap of week 4. Let's head into the fantasy corner for our hero and villain of the week. This week's hero of the week is Dak Prescott, quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys. Now, depending on your scoring system in your league, this is what his fantasy points were in my league. 40.15 points, which is really good for a quarterback in a standard league, which if you had a piece of this game between the Cowboys and the Packers, you probably had a good shot at winning your league, especially if you had the George Pickens and Dak Prescott stack. He had 31 completions for a total of 319 passing yards. He had 2 rushing yards and then total of 2 touchdowns, 1 rushing and 1 passing. Looking at our villain of the week, it's unfortunately Jamar Chase, wide receiver of the Cincinnati Bengals. Again, depending on your scoring in your league. In my league, it was 7 points, 0.3. So 5 receptions, 23 receiving yards, and 0 touchdowns. Another disappointing week from Jamar Chase. Now, this is mainly because of the offensive lineman issues, and then, of course, the obvious absence of Joe Burrow. Hopefully, he can get some momentum going with Jake Browning throughout the season, and he can kind of regroup and help us out in the fantasy world, because me as a Jamar Chase manager, this is very disappointing for him to wind up as our villain of the week. But we're looking only at week 4, so hopefully down the road he can maybe squeak out a hero of the week with Jake Browning. So let's head over to our game picks for week 5. On Thursday Night Football, we've got the San Francisco 49ers going against the Los Angeles Rams. The current total is 46.5 with LA Rams -7. I did look during the break. Mac Jones will be the potential starter in this game. They lost Juwan Jennings and they lost Ricky Pearsall. So really all Mac Jones has is Tongus, Demarcus Robinson, Kendrick Bourne, and Christian McCaffrey. Maybe we'll get in some use check to kind of fill in the gap there. So if you are betting anything on this game, maybe you want to bet on a use check touchdown, or maybe you want to bet on his yards. We could see a lot of use check in this game. So I currently have the Rams picked for this game. -7. I could see this being a double-digit point differential just with the injury situations alone. It is in LA also. Matthew Stafford is playing a really good season so far. Puka Nacua is the wide receiver 1 of the year. He is looking to just take the league by storm. Devontae Adams has been a really good weapon for Stafford. Kyren Williams seems to be the workhorse, even though Blake Corum is getting mixed in there a little bit just to relieve the stress from Kyren. Tyler Higbee is a little banged up, but they have plenty of tight ends to support Stafford if needed. And the Rams defense has been really good as well this year. Sean McVay has put together another really good team, playoff worthy team, if you would ask me. So I got the Rams in this game for sure. Looking at Sunday morning again. So get ready to wake up early with your morning coffee. We are headed to London this time with the Minnesota Vikings taking on the Cleveland Browns. The current over-under is 36.5 with Minnesota favored by -3. Very, very small game total. I do have Minnesota winning this game, bouncing back from their loss against Pittsburgh in Dublin. With Dylan Gabriel now taking the reins on the offense, it does not give me any confidence. I know the Minnesota defense is a little banged up, as well as the Minnesota offensive line, but I think I trust Carson Wentz more than I do Dylan Gabriel for sure. We will see what the Browns defense has in store for this O'Connell offense. Myles Garrett has been taking the league into his own hands. We saw what he did against Jordan Love and the Packers. So this could be a very low scoring game, hence the total only being 36.5. But I do have Minnesota pulling out a win in jolly old London to kind of make up for their unfortunate loss against Pittsburgh and Dublin last week. Moving on to the Sunday slate, we've got the Texans taking on the Baltimore Ravens. CJ Stroud kind of bounced back last week. Now with the Lamar Jackson injury, we got Cooper Rush coming in at starter. I still have Cooper Rush winning, so I did pick Baltimore to win this game in Baltimore. That was really the deciding factor for me. You still have Derrick Henry, you still got Jay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, DeAndre Hopkins. The defense is banged up, but I think Baltimore, after their loss to the Chiefs last week, I think they will bounce back and go 2-3 against CJ Stroud and the Houston Texans. Next up, we have got the Miami Dolphins heading to Carolina to take on Bryce Young and the Panthers. The over-under is 44.5. Miami is -1.5. Same thing with the Texans and Ravens. That one was slightly under. Their over-under was 40.5. Houston is actually favored by 1.5, but I am taking the Ravens. Back to the Dolphins. I do have the Dolphins winning this game. I trust Tua a lot more than I do Bryce Young. That offense for Carolina has been struggling a lot. And the defense, you can just run them over. So I'm expecting Devon Achane to have a pretty decent game against the Carolina defense. I know they lost Tyreek, but I think Waddle and Darren Waller are must starts against this Carolina defense. And you can even start Tua if you're in a pinch for your fantasy leagues with the buys. Definitely start up Tua if you need to. I think Miami is going to have a decent chance of winning this game against the Panthers. Next, we got the Las Vegas Raiders headed to Indianapolis to take on Indiana Jones and the Colts. The over-under is 48, and Indy is favored by a touchdown. I do have the Colts. They lost their first game of the year against the Rams, and I think they're going to bounce back against the Raiders. Geno Smith has been struggling a lot over in Las Vegas. I know Genti had a breakout game last week. Brock Bowers is still pretty injured. He does not look like himself. And Jacoby Myers is still a decent option for Geno. It's just Geno just hasn't looked great. The Raiders defense hasn't looked great either. So I am going with the Colts this week to bounce back. New York Giants take on the New Orleans Saints. The over-under is 42 points, with New Orleans actually favored by -1.5. I am taking New Orleans to win this game. So before I move on to the rest of the game slates, I did kind of a theme this week. I am predicting that every team in the NFL will have at least one win after week 5. So that means all the 0-4 teams I have picked to win this week. It's probably going to be very detrimental to my game picks, but I wanted to have a little fun with this week. So I am picking all the 0-4 teams to win their first game in week 5. So I've got Spencer Rattler taking out Jackson Dart and the Giants. I think they will be brought back to earth after their upset win over the Chargers. Next, we got the Dallas Cowboys taking on the New York Jets. That over-under is 47.5. Dallas is favored by 2.5. I do have Dallas. Oh, I do have Jets. The Jets are 0-4, so I have to take them to keep with my trend. So I'm betting everything on Justin Fields. It seems like he is healthy now, and the Dallas defense has been one of the worst in the league. So I think the Jets are going to win their first game at home with Justin Fields coming back and showing that he is a worthy quarterback in the situation. I like Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson's like projected to have like the most targets this year, and he needs more targets. So if Justin Fields can just keep hammering the ball to Garrett Wilson, he has Breece Hall with the running back room all his own. And I'll bring up Breece Hall again in the Show Me the Money because I might have him in part of my lineup just for this reason that he will be the only dude on there. So I am picking the Jets to win their first game against Dak Prescott, who has been really on fire this year. He has been one of the top 3 quarterbacks this year. Even with the CeeDee Lamb injury, he ignited the world on fire with George Pickens, but I think they're going to be brought back to earth as well, and the Jets are going to get their first win at home. My team, the Denver Broncos, baby, are taking on Jalen Hurts and the Philadelphia Eagles. The over-under is 43.5. Philly is, of course, favored by 3.5 because it is Philly. I did take the Broncos, though, because that is my team. I will ride and die the orange and blue. So I have picked the Broncos to hopefully upset Philly. I know A.J. Brown has been pretty disappointment this year. Devontae Smith has not really been involved either. It's been the Jalen Hurts show with Dallas Goedert and Saquon Barkley getting a lot of the action. So we'll see if A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith get shut down by that awesome Denver defense. But I am going Denver this week. Let's go Broncos. Cam Ward and the Titans are taking on Kyler Murray and the Cardinals in Arizona. The over-under is 41.5. Arizona is favored by 7.5. But since the Titans are 0-4, I am taking the Titans to win their first game on the road. With the Trey Benson injury and the James Conner IR, it's going to force Kyler Murray to throw a lot, I think. And I think the Titans can take advantage of that. And hopefully Cam Ward can have a good game. The Cardinals have been a pretty solid defense this year, but I'm going to roll the dice and I'm going to predict that Cam Ward will get his first win of the year against Arizona on the road. Tampa Bay Buccaneers take on the Seattle Seahawks. The over-under is 44.5. Seattle is favored by 3.5, and I am taking Seattle. Sam Darnold has been a surprise hit this year. He has been commanding that offense. He's got a really good rapport with Jackson Smith-Njigba. Cooper Kupp still needs to get involved more. Kenneth Walker seems to be healthy and ready to go. Charbonnet should be healthy and ready to go as well. This defense in Seattle has been really stellar, and Baker Mayfield has been struggling this year. He doesn't have Mike Evans. Chris Godwin is still getting kind of comfortable and reassessed into this offense. It's all been Emeka Ibuka, the superstar wide receiver that they drafted this year. Bucky Irving is now possibly going to miss this game, so you're stuck with Sean Tucker and Rachaad White. I think Baker is going to struggle in this game with those injuries, so I am picking Sam Darnold to go 4-1 with Seattle. I would never have guessed that in a million years. And now we get to the bloodbath. We have the Detroit Lions taking on the Cincinnati Bengals. I am so sorry, Bengals fans. The over-under is 49.5. Detroit is favored 10.5 points, which is probably what I'm going to predict. I'm predicting a blowout here. I, of course, took Detroit to win this game on the road. I think Jake Browning is going to really struggle against this Detroit defense. I think Chase Brown is going to struggle as well, even though in the Chase-O-meter I said I was hoping that he would surprise me. I am not very hopeful, though. I think the Bengals will be shut out once again against Detroit, and they are going to have to really take a look at this offensive line and the quarterback situation and see what they can salvage in this year, or do they just cut their losses and maybe get a top draft pick this year or next year with the Joe Burrow injury. So I'm taking Detroit. The Washington Commanders take on the Los Angeles Chargers. The over-under is 48.5. LA is favored by 2.5 points. Let me look to see what the most recent Jaden Daniels injury is. It's not going to change my pick, but I'm just curious on what his status is. I believe he was not practicing once again, so it is potentially going to be Marcus Mariota. Let's see what we can find here. He'll get the reps at practice, execution time, all that, yada, yada, yada. He's been medically cleared and is practicing in full on Wednesday. Okay, so Jaden Daniels will play against LA, but that doesn't matter because I am taking the Chargers to bounce back from their surprising defeat from the Giants. So plus they're at home, so I think they got home field advantage down in SoFi Stadium. So I'm taking the Chargers. Sunday Night Football, we've got the New England Patriots taking on their division rival, the Buffalo Bills. Over-under is the highest of the week, 50.5. Buffalo is favored by 8.5. I did take Buffalo. I think Buffalo will be the only 5-0 team left standing. I think they're going to be my pick for the Super Bowl if the Broncos cannot get into there. They are my AFC Super Bowl pick, aside from my Broncos, of course, because I will always root for my Broncos to go to the Super Bowl. But if they can't make it to the Super Bowl, I am predicting that Josh Allen and the Bills will be the AFC representatives of the Super Bowl this year. So I think they will be the only 5-0 team. Drake May has been looking really good. So I am excited for this game. This is my matchup of the week. I'm very excited to see what Drake May does against this Buffalo defense. TreVeyon Henderson is hopefully going to get more involved. Stephon Diggs got more involved last week. But Drake May, I'm excited to see him. And I love watching Josh Allen. I think he's the best quarterback in the league right now, aside from Dak Prescott. And I'm excited. So the New England Patriots taking on the Buffalo Bills is my matchup of the week. Sunday Night Football on NBC. I am very excited to watch that game. And then on Monday night, to wrap up week 5, we've got the Kansas City Chiefs on the road, heading to Jacksonville to take on the Jaguars. The over-under is 46.5 with KC favored by 3.5. I did take Kansas City to win this game and go 3-2, with the Jacksonville Jaguars losing to fall to 3-2. So those are my game picks this week in week 5. We will wrap up the show with Show Your the Money. And I will be doing lineups on DraftKings once again. This week I'll be doing 2, and I'll explain that in just a few moments. I unfortunately did not win any money from the lineup on last week's show, but I did do a last-minute lineup for the Monday Night Games. I won some money back. So we are going to do some more lineups this week. This week I have 2. One is a free submission that I was rewarded from DraftKings, and then the second is another $5 lineup. So with the free lineup, this is in a league where first place gets $1,500. And then after that, the rest of the money will be split up between the top. I think, let me pull this up here. The top 1,523 people will get some places paid out, with the top 5 spots being 1,500, 750, 500, 300, and 250. So let's hope that we can win some money off of a free lineup. So this lineup here, let me pull that up. We got Dak Prescott at quarterback. He is sitting at $6,000 on DraftKings this week. My running backs are Jahmyr Gibbs at $7,700, so I paid up there. And then Christian McCaffrey at $8,600, which I also paid up. That is going to affect the back half of my roster when I get to there. I'm paying up for these 2 because I think they're going to have quite a big week. Jahmyr Gibbs goes up against the horrendous Cincinnati Bengal defense. We saw Jordan Mason annihilate them when they played in Minnesota. Christian McCaffrey is going against the Rams, but he is the only healthy star elite player on this offense, so he's going to get a lot of work. At wide receiver, I've got Marvin Harrison and Quentin Johnston and George Pickens to stack with Dak Prescott. George Pickens is at 6,600. Johnston is at 5,700. Marvin Harrison at 5,400. So I had to go down a few tiers because I paid up for running back. At tight end, this is where I really got cheap, and that was Tongus of the Niners. He is the other healthy, worthy player, I guess. He showed some spurts the last couple weeks filling in for George Kittle. I really didn't have much options here, so he's sitting at 3,200 because of my running back situation. And then at flex, I did have enough to get Travis Kelce. We'll see if he can have a big game against the Jacksonville Jaguars on the road. And then at defense, surprisingly, the Browns are only 2,500, even though I think they could potentially have a pretty big game against the broken Minnesota offensive line. So I'm going with the Browns on that lineup. The $5 lineup, this pays for first place is 1,000, second place is 600, third is 400, fourth is 300, and then fifth is 250. This pays up 544 spots. So let's hope we can win some money off of this $5 one. I've got Justin Herbert at quarterback. He is sitting at 6,100 this week. My running backs are Breece Hall and Derrick Henry. I paid up for Derrick Henry. I think he's going to be leaned on a lot with the Lamar Jackson being absent in this game, and then Breece Hall being the only healthy running back is going to be helpful in this lineup because I had to pay down a little bit because of the Derrick Henry. He is sitting at only 5,600. Dallas's defense has not been great. It's one of the worst defenses in the league. So hopefully Breece Hall can take advantage of that and help this lineup going. Wide receiver, I've got Johnston once again to stack with Herbert. He is at 5,700. I've got Chris Olave at 5,200. And then Garrett Wilson at 6,100. Olave has been the top wide receiver in targets, I think. If not, he's definitely top 5, top 3. So I wanted to take advantage of that. He's got a pretty decent matchup with the Giants. So we'll see if Rattler can just feed Olave the ball for this lineup. Same thing with Garrett Wilson. He's the only real target for Justin Fields, who is now healthy again. So I'm hopefully going to get a big game out of Justin Fields and Garrett Wilson against this very terrible Dallas offense or defense, Tight end, I've got Tyler Warren. He seems to be the number one dude for Daniel Jones down in the Colts, so I wanted to get him in this lineup. And then I had, surprisingly, a decent chunk of money left over. So I'm going to roll with Amari Hampton, who has been quite a superstar for the Chargers the last few weeks. He's sitting at 6,500, so he is there in my flex to kind of double stack with Herbert. And then at defense, I'm going with the Rams. They are sitting at 3,100. They're going up against a broken San Francisco offense with Mac Jones leading the way at quarterback. So those are the two lineups for this week. We'll see if I can score some cash this week. Well, that'll do it for this week's episode of the End Zone Report. I hope everybody wins their bets, wins their fantasy lineups this week, and I will see you all on the other side of week 5.